250 class. What did I think of the 250 class? Besides the obvious between Freeze and Craig.
Oh, he goes wide and takes him down.
I did do a crash analysis video on that. It went pretty in depth. So if you want to watch that, make sure you check that out. And overall, I kind of feel that drama brings people into the stands. You know, you think of NASCAR, people show up there and they want to see crashes. They want to see carnage. You know, you're filling in seats, which ultimately makes the bottom line to the entertainment production company Feld, and hopefully they could trickle it down into the riders, right? That's what we're praying for. So am I for shit like that happening? Not entirely, because that was a super fast section and it was just kind of dangerous. And I do kind of feel as if what Freeze did was sort of the same thing that what Ferrandis did to Craig a couple years ago, maybe, yeah, it was a couple years ago, and then what Anderson did to Kenny. You know, they exploded him. And yeah, there was a small little backlash. Gosh, might as well call me Zach Osborne. Get it. Zach, you know, your reputation speaks for itself. Us riders, concussions, we don't learn how to talk. It's just kind of what happens, right? We got to take lessons and have to have mentors and sort of thing, you know. Reading books helps with vocabulary, but if you have a hard time speaking, it's hard to digressing, right? Over with. It's interesting that because of Freezy's history of always sort of being the dickhead, so he's getting more of a backlash. But Ferrandis didn't get as big of one, and Anderson didn't get as big of one, and you know, even Barcia doesn't get as big of a one, doing sort of the same typical moves. So if you put those together comparably, it's hard to say. You know, I don't think it was intentional, but again, when you have a history of doing it, the AMA should step in, make some sort of punishment that sticks. Don't use them as an example, because AMA and racing dirt bikes is, you know, nice guy sport, right? You know, you don't hear anything bad. Nobody does drugs. Nobody cheats. Everyone plays nice. But we need to do something. Protect the riders. Keep them from taking it into their own hands. And I guess that's all I'm going to talk about on that subject. Is it could be good for the sport because of drama. However, we want to make it still safe because the sport is dangerous enough and there's really no reward at the end of it, so why make it even more risky? And I guess I did say that I think his move down to the 250 class was he had some unfinished business. He wants to win some trophies before he actually retires. And I guess I'm continuing on to it. So, but really there's not much else to talk about in the 250 class, because you got a Sandbagger or Craig that can come through the pack. It was fun watching him come through the pack. It really was. I'm getting used to watching him come through the pack. It's fun. He's so much faster. Even that was a small whoop section, but he was the fastest guy in the whoops of anybody. I'm talking Tomac, everybody. He was the fastest dude. It was a small set of whoops. They should have had a giant whoop section for that long straightaway back behind the start. I think that would have been more entertaining than these just triple. You know, maybe triple, wall, whoops, something. Maybe they could have put a wall after the little step over the starting gate too, to slow guys down, because they were going super fast. You know, a supercross track isn't supposed to be a motocross track that's that fast, just my opinion. Because then you got guys like Joe Shimoda that really should just be finishing third every weekend. And Hunter Lawrence, yeah, there's not much else to talk about besides that. I guess we could say Hunter Lawrence has earned the win because he stayed out of trouble, because you got to have a little bit of luck. Mosman, I think, is faster than Hunter, and I don't really think Hunter can win the championship unless Freezy takes Craig out again. And then Shimoda, he's really battling with Mosman for the third spot, and that's just where he needs to stay. His goal should be top 3 by the end of the series. And everyone should just be praying that Craig has more bad luck. Because if not, Craig is winning it. hands down. Speed to racecraft, he's winning it. I'm waiting for the East Coast to start up so we can see some other riders. And there seems to be such a big gap that's happening. You talk about outliers where you have to have 10,000 hours to be proficient at something. And now we've got places like the Millsaps training facility, you got Club MX, you got Reynolds Place, but you have to be a part of it. You have to be a part of it. You can't do it locally anymore. My best advice for little kids would be to like ditch the local scene whatsoever, because it's not going to help you. The gap is becoming way too long of a stretch to make it up. You've got to get yourself to some of the amateur nationals to race against these guys that are living at the Millsaps training facility, that are living at these things, because they're progressing at such a level you're never going to be able to catch up. It's sad that we're kind of becoming an elitist sport because of that. And I know I'm going to piss some people off. A lot of people think that these guys are just extraordinary talented, that if they just picked up a bike yesterday, they would have been able to do this. I absolutely disagree. I think that the majority of the privateers out there have got the speed given the right equipment and the right format training-wise, and expertise with the tracks that they ride would be just as good. And some of those guys might actually be the outliers that are a little bit more talented to be able to beat the Tomacs and everybody else. But they're never going to get the opportunity because the system is focused on all these amateurs, not privateers that are sort of the college level athletes of this sport. It's bass-ackwards, in my opinion. So if you want to make this a profession, you need to ditch the local stuff. Ditch the local stuff. Go spend your time at some of these facilities. You've got to have a mentor. You got to have somebody that is much faster than you that you can strive to be. Locally, you're not going to find it. You're just not going to. Only go to the amateur nationals, because that's where all the sponsors are. That's the only place you're going to get the support necessary to get a ticket to be able to be successful. And you look at the amateur future stuff. The guys that are winning that stuff are factory guys. They're already factory guys. The sport is basically taking football players that are in kindergarten and saying, this is our NFL player. We're going to invest all of our stuff into this NFL player. If that doesn't sound stupid, I don't know what does. The kid doesn't have the opportunity to choose what he wants to do. He's basically being forced into something. And yeah, little kids are going to do what they want to make their parents proud and give them recognition, but it creates all this wrong, effed up headspace because you're treated as if you're this just special phenom when you have just done a shit ton of work and you don't know what else to do. All you know what to do is to work effing hard on a dirt bike, but it's been paved for you. And again, I'm not saying that people aren't talented and aren't able to be the exception, not the rule. I'm just looking at it from a 1,000-foot view. And maybe there's a little bit of bitterness, a little bit right in there. And I'm really digressing a lot. So I'm trying to get my point across, which isn't really happening, that if you're trying to get into be a professional, not getting your pro license is not how you're going to do it, because you're never going to get a factory ride from it. And if you do, you have to be like top 5, top 3. You know, guys like Freddie Noren should have had a full-on factory ride for a long time. There's so many privateers out there that should have been given deals, not just fill-ins, in order to make it happen. If you want to be the guy that is next in line, because they have a list of a shit ton of them, then you need to A, ditch the local stuff, B, only go to amateur nationals, C, you got to live at some sort of a facility so that you're constantly practicing, forming your craft, being taught the proper techniques from guys like Rhino, just all this stuff, because there's becoming a huge gap. There's becoming a huge gap, and the cost of doing business for that is the only way you're going to get into becoming that guy. I don't know how many times I have to say it, but to be the outlier, you've got to put in the work, but there's got to be a given path. talent is not enough anymore. It's not enough. You look at guys like Bill Gates. They were given, God, I'm really digressing here. They were lucky enough to go to a school that had a computer, where only 1 or 2 or 3 of them were in the entire country. He went to a high school that had a computer, so he was able to learn coding for 4 or 5 years. And so by the time he went to college, he was already more of an expert on that type of a language than anyone else. So he had a huge head start, and it ended up turning into Microsoft. Not saying that he wasn't a genius, etc., blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of geniuses out there that don't add up to anything because they don't have the luck, they don't have the structure behind them. If you want your kid to make it racing, he's gotta have the structure. If you think he's talented and he's hardworking, boom, that's only part of the puzzle. He's got to have the structure. Shamrock said, who's in the UFC Hall of Fame, there's 3 things a man has to have to be successful. A, he's got to be a mentor. I've been talking about having a damn mentor. B, he's got to have somebody that he competes with, somebody that he can compare to, somebody that's just as fast as him so that they can push each other and become better. That's why all these factory teams are training together, and you got guys that are on different teams, whether they're at the Sandbox or whatever facility, they're riding together, and they're also racing against each other. They're doing it is because they're comparing themselves to each other. They're feeding off of each other. They're learning, constantly learning and soaking up what the other rider is doing. We don't live in an era of motocross anymore where you have Carmichael training by himself, McGrath training by himself. And then the last thing you need is you need somebody to teach so that you can hone in on your craft and not forget what you learned. This is something very simple, like how to elbows up, you know, fingers on the clutch, front brake, toes pointed in, like stupid shit. You got to be able to teach somebody. It'll make you feel better about yourself because you're giving back, because giving is very important to the equation. It's going to help you not get burnt out so much of this sport, because it's going to force you to think about everything at just a more simplistic way. So that is it. I'm done. It was way too long. But this is Johnny F. and Hopper, and go wide open, like you're going the other direction from what the title and the whole spectrum of what the video was about. We just did a complete 180 and we just shifted and went, just held that sucker elbow down because we had that throttle pin so to the floor. We're just fucking smoking. Kids, don't cuss. Makes you look stupid. Don't cuss.